when a marriage is abusive, it's very easy to leave it, financially struggle, which that is a fear that makes many women's intuition shut down. When somebody has never had their own financial power, their own financial onus, you are kind of explaining yourself and your spending habits to somebody on a whole spectrum of control.
What do we do for women that are experiencing financial abuse?
Women need to have their own source of income coming in now. We just don't live in that generational time now where we can rely on anybody to save us or carry us financially anymore.
What is financial abuse? What defines that?
It can be from as little as needing to have to explain every single purchase that you make, and then they also control what you spend and what you do.
What's one thing you wish every woman knew about life after divorce?
It's a choice. This could be the end of your world, or it can be the best thing that ever happened to you. You were free of something that was not meant for you anymore, and that's a gift.
How do you help women find that again once they actually have left?
Look, I'm a really big one on
Carla, we started talking before we pressed record, and we probably missed all the good things now that we've got to make sure that we do a full circle on them. But thank you for being here today.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
I'm very excited for this episode, but especially I can't think of an episode where we've covered what we're going to cover today, which is, you were just talking about. Well, let's start with who you are, because maybe the listener hasn't come across you or your work, and then we can get into the juicy things.
So I am a divorce coach, bit of an icebreaker for dinner parties, and I publish some books on love and divorce, and I work predominantly with women, but I have recently started working with men as well because the need is there.
Absolutely. It's not bias.
No, absolutely
not.
not.
Yeah. And I mean, my question then is, how did you find yourself in this line of work? Because like you said, you don't know many people doing what you're doing the way you do it.
No. So it was, it was a very accidental journey. I was health coaching. When I was married, I trained to be a coach because I wasn't happy in myself. And so I sort of started the whole health and confidence coaching. And then in 2015, I asked my husband for a divorce. And I kind of thought that I had expressed that quite well, but he sort of projected back onto me that maybe I was wrong and that I had made a mistake and that I was going to regret it. And it started this very interesting journey of thinking that it was the right thing for me, but actually everybody mirroring back to me, you're maybe doing the wrong thing. You should probably have some guilt and shame and fear about that. When actually I had kind of realised in my mind that I couldn't be who I was meant to be in my marriage, and I had fully accepted that for me to be able to grow, I had to leave it. And so first I had to sort of navigate a husband that had an opinion that I needed to do some work on myself, that I was the problem. So that sort of took, 9 months for him to accept that I was done and that I meant it. And then I had to navigate family as well. I'm very close with my mother and I love her dearly, but, the worst words and worst advice out of her mouth at the time was, Carla, you've got a lovely home and a lovely life. You might regret this. And I remember saying to her, Mum, that's the worst advice you've ever given me. And really from that moment forward, whenever she has said go left, I have gone right. And we do joke about that. But, so that I had to navigate family and then you had to navigate friends and their uncomfortableness with now all of a sudden you're getting a divorce and their almost protection about their own marriage.
Right.
And I had spent 14 years with my ex-husband. And look, we have a great relationship now, so I want to umbrella the entire call with that, But, I was very much in the passenger seat of my own life when I was in that marriage. Right. The marriage was really and the big life choices were driven by him, the emotional, the financial, the practical. And look, when I came to him when I was 21, I kind of was really happy to outsource that to him. But by the time I got to 35, I wasn't a 21-year-old anymore. And there was a desire to just grow and expand. And as I stepped into wanting to be not just a mum anymore, step back into my career, it just opened up something in my psyche, and my marriage had to end. But it was one of those things that not everybody was happy with. And so when I finally did leave my marriage in 2017, I moved into my own home. I had 2 daughters under 5. I'd been out of work for 5 years. I'd been a stay-at-home mum. My former profession is a dental hygienist. That was what I did before having children. So I returned back to being a dental hygienist. I'd never had a bill in my own name before. I'd never lived in my own house as a woman before. So I was very much a girl finding her feet and wanting to make it work. And, you know, that was just an inner decision of there is nobody really giving me any positivity right here. And everybody, you know, almost, well, certainly I think my ex-husband at the time kind of probably wanted to see me fail.
Right.
You know,
yeah, right.
I'm not saying
and
that,
for very selfish reasons.
Badly, but, you know, like I kind of, you know, there was a bit of righteousness there.
Yeah.
And I just had this doggedness that, no, I know I've made the right decision for myself and I'm not going back and I'm not going to financially struggle. And I don't want to watch him have amazing times with our girls and me not be able to do that. And I was looking for positive content out there. I'm a bookworm and I couldn't find anything.
Right.
Everything at that time was very geared towards your narcissistic ex and this and that. Well, I just spent 14 years in the passenger seat of his life. I didn't need to read any more about him or any more about that situation.
Right.
And I remember Eat, Pray, Love was the only book out there at the time about somebody leaving a marriage and going on a bit of a personal growth journey. And so I sort of at that time really wanted to write up a book in 2017, but I wasn't ready to write it. And I continued coaching, building my business. And then I just naturally gravitated into more relationship divorce coaching because I kept attracting that client. And then in 2020, I started writing that first book. I published it in 2021. And then from that moment on, I have very much firmly moved into the divorce space, the love space as my journey's progressed. And, you know, you accidentally find your dharma and your niche and you don't quite know how you got to be in this bizarre position.
Yes.
But you are. And, you know, this is my passion, is to empower women and men to leave something that isn't love, that isn't healthy, that could be toxic, could be abusive, and actually to go on and have a happy life with or without a new partner immediately, but to actually sort of reach their fullest potential. You know, we are not born to get married. We are born to live an amazing full life.
And you speak a lot about how you can redefine divorce as being a new beginning.
Yes, absolutely.
And not a failure.
Yes.
And reframing that, I think, more than anything is what you're doing, right? You're looking at it going, because I feel like you're right, a lot of women would talk about a failed marriage.
Yes, and a lot of people do still attach shame, guilt and failure to a marriage. Sometimes, and it's a crude thing to say, when a marriage is abusive, it's very easy to leave it. But when it's just not that great, you know, it's not, I call that the warm bath scenario. You know, it's not that hot, you can't be in it, not that cold, you have to get out. You know, it's comfortable, but it's not.
The lukewarm bath.
It's the lukewarm bath, you know. And for those reasons, when you might just be not in love, not connected, it's a very conflicting decision to make about, am I being selfish? Am I going to regret this? How long do I give it?
Right. And also I think it's very interesting because I think that many women know that maybe that's what their desire is, but they keep going back obviously for a lot of the reasons that you mentioned.
Yeah.
Even though in any other scenario, if you make a decision and you know that it's scary but wrong, you know it's scary but wrong.
Yes.
But for some reason, scary but wrong in this scenario, you just it's hard to break out of that.
Well, I mean, they always say the head thinks, the gut feels, the heart knows.
Right.
But the head is very loud. And the head is all fear-based voice and programming, so projection onto us about what is the right thing to do. And so while we know now socially you can leave a marriage, you're not going to be outcast or judged for it, there is still a stigma attached to it of failure. Because nobody gets married hoping or assuming we're going to get a divorce, you know.
But also to your point as well, it makes a lot of other people uncomfortable and we tend to that's probably just as hard as making the decision or knowing that you are done.
Yeah.
Is then navigating that, like to your point, you said that. It's everybody else's discomfort with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so my former profession is a dental hygienist. And so if I walk into a social situation where I don't really know anybody, I do joke with friends, tonight I'm going to be a dental hygienist. I would rather hear about their root canal gone wrong than their marriage. I mean, that's how many marriages are together still for the wrong reasons, not love. And by the wrong reasons, I mean financial ties, lifestyle, the facade, children perhaps. And, that's not love. And so there's no judgment on somebody staying in a marriage for that. But yes, when you step into the room and you are a divorce coach amongst a sea of women that are in this space of settling and presenting a facade, your presence all of a sudden shows up who on the table is actually happily married or not. And when you are in
that's a fun drinking game.
Oh, it's such a fun drinking game.
Like you get to sit outside, we're going to stay in here.
Yes, right. Clears the room fairly fast.
I'm sure it does. But I'm sure many women are intrigued. Yes. And probably want to have a conversation with you just about their, thoughts or feelings.
Yes.
And maybe not the dinner party's not the right place to be doing that.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
So how do you then help the women that have obviously, or men that have come to you, the process of what does that look like as a coach? Like they're coming to you when they've left, they're coming to you before they've left?
Both.
Right.
So sometimes I have clients come to me where they are just struggling to make a decision. They might have been like I was, where they have a partner or family members that are sort of pressuring them and making them doubt their feelings and what they know to be true for themselves. And so you really are kind of breaking free of the herd and going against the grain of what others want for you. So that person can have a lot of conflict, really struggle to own a decision and just sort of quieten the noise and understand what is true for me, and do I have the courage and bravery to move forward? So I work with that individual. I also work with the individual who knows her marriage is over, or him, he knows his marriage is over, but there's a lot of fears around leaving and a lot of doubts about how do I navigate this. And so for me then it's about helping this person really silence and heal those fears and heal that patterning that's allowed the marriage to teeter along for so many years, but now they have to kind of break that patterning to even be able to leave the marriage. And then the third person that I work with is somebody whose marriage has already ended. So we're really healing from the self-abandonment, the abuse, whatever went on in that marriage over a long period of time so that they can actually have a positive mindset and not be carrying around all this past baggage. And then, of course, there is that love journey that comes with that when you leave a marriage in terms of who do we attract and what am I attracting and what does it say about me if I'm attracting a certain person on repeat or nobody,
Right. Well, I think one of the most common things I would hear women say as patients is that they lose their identity over time, whether it's their often doesn't probably matter if it's a happy or unhappy marriage. I think women will say this. How do you help women find that again once they actually have left, that they have to find who they are again, and they might not actually be the person they were before either?
Well, a lot of the time, sometimes if we really reflect, we didn't even really know who we were before we entered the marriage, So you're trying to find something that you never really were. Yeah. But whenever a woman comes to me and it is that cliche of I don't know who I am, well, what that says to us is that she is somebody who has completely self-abandoned, who put everybody else's needs, goals and desires above her own. She maybe didn't even have any of her own. There was a vicarious living through her children, for her family, maybe even that validation of whoever she was married to. And so it is actually not just a divorcing of a person in that scenario, it's a divorcing of an entire version of old self.
Right.
So you're going through a complete reassessment of who am I, who did I think I was going to be, how did I think my life was going to look, how could it look now? And it is something that is very confronting and overwhelming if you are, especially some of these women that come to me in their 50s, and who am I now that everything I thought I was is now gone?
Yeah.
And it's confronting. And so it takes time to undo what is kind of a bit of a gilded cage in the mind. that limitation of sense of self, of possibility.
It's so true. I haven't thought about really what is a common age that people are actually walking away from their marriages. Do you see a pattern? Like, is there?
Yeah, I mean, the majority of my clients are 35 to 55.
Right.
I would say that that's the predominant. I'm certainly getting a lot more of that individual that is in that 50 to 55 bracket now more than ever. I think culturally now we're more accepting of divorce than we were 10 or 15 years ago. So a lot of those marriages have stayed together for children, for lifestyle. COVID was a big thing that forced people to have to sit in a home with somebody that they were perhaps living very separate lives from. And all of a sudden you were reminded we don't really have a lot in common. And actually our marriage only survives because we don't spend a lot of time together. And so for that person of that sort of older generation in the sort of 50-55 bracket, it's kind of something that perhaps should have happened long ago if culturally it was more acceptable back when they were in their 40s. And some women that are leaving in their 35s and their 40s, it is for the same reasons, only they're willing to sort of snatch it now.
Well, like you said, I think it's become a little bit more acceptable. Maybe also there is examples now where women are able to do that and it's been okay, whereas once upon a time, and it's not to say for a moment our world doesn't fall apart. I think it probably does. But I do think that there's examples of women or couples that have done that and you're like, hang on a minute, they are now at a point where they have a happy and healthy relationship. Yes. And that's often...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There are those examples of that. I think also the financial piece is a big one. If you are perhaps 50, 55, the likelihood is that you didn't really have much of your own career. You were probably more of a stay-at-home mum. That was what was kind of the stereotype and actually the version of success, to be that sort of mum that stayed at home and the dad went off to work. So, if you're looking to leave later on in life, you don't necessarily have an established career and established income to be able to rely on. Whereas for a lot of women now, 40, 35, even this younger generation, we're getting degrees. We have work that we can fall back on. We might not want to return back to work, but we can.
Yes.
And so having that financial independence, it kind of gives us the confidence to be able to know, well, I could leave. It might not be as comfortable. It might be a struggle. I might have to change my lifestyle, downsize, whatever, but I could put food on the table. I would be okay.
Right.
Some of these women in that 45, 50, 55 bracket particularly, they didn't have that.
Yeah. Well, I found you actually, I hadn't come across your work before, but I put out on Instagram, I wanted to speak to someone about financial abuse. Yes. Because what I'm seeing in the clinic is a lot of women don't actually even realise that that's what they're subject to. Correct, yes. And so I guess my first question around that is, what is financial abuse? What defines that? Because like I said, I think there are a lot of women in this position that don't even realise they're actually in it.
I mean, financial abuse is quite a broad spectrum, and it can be from as little as needing to explain every single purchase that you make, or it could be only being given a certain amount of money every week and that kind of being monitored, whereas he doesn't have to kind of explain to you what he's doing. But then it can be right up until, somebody doesn't even want you to go back to work, and then they also control what you spend and what you do. And so there are a lot of women that come to me, they don't have access to their own bank accounts, their own money. That, they are often reconciling my accounts at the end of the month is interesting, let me say that, because Susie paid and I don't have a Susie client, so who paid for Sally, Excuse me. And I'm fine with it because they can't be seen to be putting or using my services from their account, and so this is when somebody has never had their own financial power, their own financial onus, you are kind of explaining yourself and your spending habits to somebody on a whole spectrum of control.
And I think that the challenge is that in previous times that was kind of the way households were run.
Totally.
The male went to work, the woman often stayed home, looked after children and had a budget that they used to spend to buy the necessities for the house to run.
Correct, yeah.
That's probably how we got here.
Yes, yeah. I mean, financial codependence, was accepted. And in a way, if you didn't have to go to work, that was seen as a version of success.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it was glorified almost.
Yeah, it was glorified, you know, be able to pump out all these different recipes and dishes. And
with an apron.
one of my closest of girlfriends, she jokes that she was the dinner party queen during her marriage. You know, she had that many different types of cloth napkins. So when she got divorced, she's like, I'm never having another dinner party, you know.
Or we're using disposable serviettes.
What was I thinking? Like, who was I back then? But, you know, it was glorified, you know. And so we do these things thinking that this is success. This is what a wife looks like. This is how we make home, and we don't necessarily question it.
Right. Yes. So for the woman listening that is saying, okay, well, that's actually me. That is not.
Sorry.
But I mean, what is it
dinner
that
parties are fabulous.
Yeah. What do we do for women that are experiencing financial abuse? What are some steps? It's like, I mean, it's not necessarily a reason to leave. There needs to be some conversation, but it may also be a red flag.
Yes. Look, I'm a really big one on women need to have their own source of income coming in now. We just don't live in that generational time now where we can rely on anybody to save us or carry us financially anymore.
Well, you never know what might happen either. So there's that as well. Correct. It might not be that. I think, well, there's a sense of fulfillment that comes with that as well, not just
totally.
There's many reasons why.
Yeah, I mean, you and I love our work, and so I think we're really lucky to say that we have fulfillment from our job. There are many women that don't have fulfillment from their job, but it does give them independence. And, you know, the first job that I did when I had 2 young children, I couldn't go back to being a dental hygienist. I cleaned hotel rooms. I was reflecting on that as I was coming here today. What was the first job I did to get myself out of the house?
Yeah, right.
And we were living in the Pilbara in Western Australia in a mining town. My ex-husband worked for a mining company, and there were just no jobs going, and it was the only thing I could get. But I was just happy to get out into and doing something for myself again. It wasn't even the sense that we really needed the money. And that's important for a woman. I even though I was only cleaning hotel rooms and changing sheets and cleaning toilets, you know, it was way below my pay grade and my capabilities. But it was great for my confidence. I would define that moment of really me starting to get a sense of self again and independence, the reminder that I can do this.
Right.
And I wasn't looking to leave my marriage at the time. It was just what I needed to be able to get out of the bubble of my marriage and home life, which wasn't great at the time, but I wouldn't have said it was divorce worthy either.
Right.
So all women now, you know, it's really important that if you find yourself in a space where you do feel a sense of financial abuse or control, do look to try and find some work. It doesn't have to pay the bills. It's just to give you a sense of confidence that I could do this, that it is out there, that I am capable. And, you know, you might just need that little burst of positivity and confidence later on down the track.
Well, I don't think anything terrible is going to come from doing that.
No, absolutely not.
And then figure out the next steps. And I guess it's not as, like I said, it's just that's one facet that that exists in a marriage where there might be some challenges. I mean, I don't think any marriage is exempt from that, but, you know.
No, I mean, but yes, if there's financial abuse or financial coercion, what almost always comes with it is emotional abuse and emotional coercion. They kind of come hand in hand. It's a mechanism of control, superiority often as well.
And then at that point in time, I guess it's about getting the right advice too, whether it's legal advice or what would you be advising your clients at that point?
Yes, I mean, this is where you're really trying to if you were looking to leave your marriage and you're finding yourself in a financially controlled, abusive situation, look, you would really be trying to put some money aside for yourself. I saw something recently with the Commonwealth Bank where they have a financial abuse program out so there are more and more services popping up. And, you know, this is where you do reach out to your Centrelinks and see what is available for you. You really have to get quite proactive. You cannot stay in a victim mentality. And for somebody in a financially coercive space, that is often the limitation. It's the victim mindset that comes with being in a controlled situation over however many years. They start seeing no possibility, no way out of it. And so you must look, you must fight, you must find a way.
And in your experience, women that have done that have found ways, I'm assuming.
Absolutely.
Ways that didn't even know that existed.
Yes, I found a way. Like I said, you know, you if you want it bad enough, you find a way. You know, that is the truth of the matter. And all of us have to navigate children. Sometimes that can be a tricky one if the husband says, I don't want to have the children. That is also a problem sometimes when women want to go back to work. And so you just have to get – every client in this situation is unique. You just have to get creative.
But there are always ways.
There's always ways. If you take the attitude, I mean, it's probably I don't take a no for an answer when I want something, and you really have to take that as an attitude.
So let's move to the other side. Someone's gone through a divorce and they're ready to start dating again.
Yes.
What are some of the ways that you encourage women to approach dating with confidence, especially if they're feeling a bit lost or, again, they don't know who they are after?
Yeah,
leaving?
I don't like to throw my clients out into the dating world while they are in the space of I don't know who I am. What happens there is you end up attracting men who also don't know who they are. We are mirrors. Yes. We attract our mirror back to us. And so the last thing I need when a client is already wounded is to go and get another layer of wounding on top of the wounding.
Right, yes.
So I'm very mindful about that. And often if somebody is dating, if they don't know who they are and they're dating, it's often coming from a place of I don't want to be alone and from validation. I need someone to like me. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it opens yourself up to the kind of man that's not looking for anything long term. So getting really clear on what you're actually looking for and what you're actually ready for, because that's actually going to shape what you attract. And very rarely do we attract something outside of the bounds of who we actually are. Very rare.
At that point in time.
At that point in time.
It's very important, I think, that you mentioned that. I've never actually really thought about it, but because I haven't found myself in that position, I've seen other people obviously go through those processes. And yes, I think we keep on learning. The same thing will keep on showing up until we learn whatever it is we need to learn to then move on to the next iteration of ourselves.
Well, I mean, love is an evolution process. And if you have been in a marriage for 20 years that was abusive, then you must own, quite possibly, I don't know what love is. My version of what love looks like is not healthy. The version of behaviour and patterning that I have taken on to survive my marriage for the last 20 years is not conducive to move forward with. And so it's actually a very different version of self that you need to move forward with. And unfortunately, some things don't get healed until we're in relationship. We don't know they exist as a shadow until somebody goes and steps on it.
Interesting. So what patterns do you see women who attract similar relationships and similar dynamics post-divorce, what do you see and how do you break them?
Well, a lot of women complain about meeting men that are emotionally unavailable, but what they fail to recognise is they too are emotionally unavailable.
Right.
Awkward.
But,
if you have a fear of vulnerability, if you're a fear of being heard again, of being fully seen, well, you're going to attract a man who also has those qualities, and that is emotional unavailability. That's a big one. Another big one I see is women that have come out of relationships where there was a lack of sexual connection or there had been no sexual attraction for many years. They exit the marriage like just the cup is empty. Okay, the cup is empty on the sexual level, like there is a burning desire and need. And so they do start dating because they are wanting that physical connection. But then because we are biologically primed when we have physical connection more than a few times with one man to get feelings, all of a sudden they've attracted a man for reasons of sexual connection and now they want emotional connection from a man. Well, he never came to you because you wanted emotional connection. And so then a lot of women will end up staying in a relationship that's more based from a sexual connection, physical connection, hoping that he's going to step into emotional depth when he kind of really didn't have any.
Right.
Right. And so that is something that I see over and over again. And so then you end up staying available to a man that really can't give you what you need. And then there is that acceptance, okay, well, I came out of my marriage with the sexual needs cup empty, dry, and
literally.
As a result, I've attracted that. But he might not actually be able to give me what I'm ready for now that sexual needs cup is replenished again.
Right.
And so this is where there's the evolution of what it is that I'm looking for and I'm ready for. And so sometimes you do outgrow a connection that at the initial stage was a match for you.
What I'm hearing is that there's just so much you can't change anyone else. There has to be a lot of reflection, not in a negative way. It's just in a learning curiosity kind of who am I?
Yes, yeah.
And what is it that I actually do want?
Well, love is a growth journey, and what happens is that not everybody is going to grow with you or grow in the same direction as you. And actually, when we outgrow a partner and they don't grow with us, it's a big sign that that is the end of that connection. Because I do believe in true love, and I do believe in that twin flame kind of connection and dynamic. That is defined by two people that grow in unison.
Right.
You know, and so they have a very different journey. When one person grows, it's almost a catalyst for the other person to grow. And it's not through nagging or dragging.
No, right. No, 100%.
It just organically happens where two people are just inspired by one another. The connection inspires them to become this growing forever mechanism. And that's a unique connection, and that's a needle in a haystack. And you're not necessarily going to get that from some guy off Tinder.
Oh,
you know,
that's another whole scenario that I didn't have to ever deal with. And when patients are talking about this to me, I'm like, oh wow, it's a whole different world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not anti-dating apps.
No, but I mean, it's just another whole thing that
well,
to
I mean,
navigate.
The thing is, anybody can be on a dating app that's technically not ready to be in a relationship.
Right.
You know, in the olden days, you had to get up, get dressed, and go out. So if you're kind of depressed and flat, chances are you probably just stayed at home on the couch.
Yes.
Well, now that depressed person that's still moaning and, you know, pining after their old lover that doesn't want to get off the couch, they can sit on the couch and still scroll and attract a partner when they're really not ready at all.
Right.
And so that's the danger, is that it can really attract people that if they had to get dressed and go out and put a major effort into meeting somebody, they probably wouldn't do it.
Right. I think it's a whole nother conversation, but I think it is quite interesting. I've heard people sort of say, you know, it's when you're on an app and you are swiping and you see someone, you know, you're not there to get married necessarily. It's not different to passing someone in the street and going, oh, you look like someone that, you know, you're attractive. That's kind of what you're doing.
Yes,
but you're cutting straight to a conversation at that point. At the supermarket, you might not do that.
I mean,
it's very interesting.
I do have clients that have met lovely partners. And in the past, you know, I had met some of my earlier partners on dating apps. So, you know, it is possible on there. But like, I guess what I'm saying is the person that's really looking for love and deep connection and that's living a fulfilling life and, you know, really happy in themselves, they're probably not on the apps.
Right, yeah.
And if they are, they're on there for 1 hour, they're reminded why they didn't want to get on there, and then they're off again.
Yes. Many people feel pressure to maintain appearances during a breakup.
Yes.
How do you guide women in releasing that and focusing on themselves?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of people live with the facade, and it's a self-identity, how I like to be perceived, who I believed I was, and that can be very humbling to break up depending on how deep the facade has been compared to the truth behind, you know, the actual couple. This is where we just have to release the lie.
Well, I mean, there's nothing more freeing, I don't think, at that point in time either.
Well, you actually don't have a choice.
Right, okay.
You either release the lie or you resist.
Right.
And resistance only brings pain. You know, the marriage is going to end at some point.
Right.
So you either step into your authenticity and own the truth of it, or you hold on to a lie. And we don't live in a society now where we see through lies now. Because authenticity is becoming something that we value more. You know, we don't believe in longevity and ignore the quality of something anymore. So it's a very outdated programming when we are desperately trying to hold on to a facade now. It's very outdated. But
it also sets us up for a bigger crash, doesn't it? Like,
totally, yes.
Because it's exhausting.
Well, it's the podium style couple and lifestyle where you've sort of built yourself to be in a certain place or a certain couple. And it is extremely humbling to knock yourself off a podium that you've kind of built for yourself.
Right. Right.
You don't mean to. You think you follow the success pathway, but then it gets out of hand. there is nothing I can offer here other than you must choose now to be authentic more than you are to hold on to a lie, because like you said, it's a heavy weight to carry. And
it's already heavy as it is.
correct. And, you know, emotional repression, lying to self, withholding truth, it manifests as illness, and it's not worth it.
Right.
You know, in the longevity of your life, it's not worth it. And so we must ask, why am I desperately holding on to the facade? Because often most people around you, they're probably not really believing it anyway.
Right. Well, there's that as well.
You
There's
know?
that as well. So in your experience, have you been able to support couples, or one of the partners, more than likely not both of them, through a divorce that has been everything that they hoped and more? Like, is that something that exists?
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, one of my favourite clients, you know, she had the cliched marriage ending where, you know, he left her for a younger woman that he was working with. She found photos on the phone. And for a client like that, the first session is always primarily focused on the lie we've been telling ourselves. You know, because as women, we are highly intuitive. And so when somebody has been in a marriage with that dynamic over a long period of time, that's a conscious choice to ignore and shut down. You know, so we tell ourselves this story that we didn't know, but actually when it finally does happen, you know, when did my intuition really spark? You know, the answer is always 20 years ago.
Right.
You know, and so it's always about unpacking the story that we've told about our marriage, and that frees and liberates us. You know, we shed the weight of guilt, shame and failure, and we start to see ourselves as just free of a lie. And with this client, as soon as she saw that, you know, she was able to step into owning a business that her ex-husband had never supported her or wanted her to do. She's now thriving in this business, you know, just shining like a superstar. And she's now investing in properties when one of her fears was, I'm going to financially struggle, which that is a fear that makes many women's intuition shut down. I'm not going to see it because I can't deal with it if it's real. The consequences of it is too much. So she was one of those women. And so she's like my ideal client, you know. I've interviewed her on my podcast and she's just shining, you know, and she's on that love journey now. And, you know, when you have lost yourself for a long period of time, when you've been through gaslighting and narcissism and abuse, the reality is sometimes it takes you longer to be ready for love again.
Right.
So that's her journey at the moment, and that's not a failure. That's just an acknowledgement that, gosh, I've had to overcome a lot to find myself again. Now I'm really in my groove. Now I'm really who I was always meant to be. You know, now I'm in the place where I could potentially meet a love partner that's going to grow with me. And you know, that takes time.
Yeah.
You know, so removing even the sense of failure for a woman that had completely lost herself or never even knew who she was, that it might take me a little bit of time to find a partner because actually I'm not even who I'm meant to be.
And you also know what you don't want anymore.
Well, that's right. I mean, dating sometimes from that space becomes very clarifying. I mean, I had that example for myself where I thought I wanted the blended family. And that was 2017, 2018 version of Carla, where I thought I wanted the blended family. Right. And he had 2 children, the same age as my 2, and he loved it and I hated it.
Yeah, right.
It just shoved me straight back into the role of servitude, now not just for my kids but for somebody else's children.
Right.
And I remember feeling a real sense of inner conflict of I thought I wanted this and he loves this and I don't really want this. And that was a clarifying moment for me that actually, no, I don't want to slip back into the role of servitude for somebody else's children. I don't want every time I have my children to be around other young children. And so when he did propose, that was the moment I said no, because I knew in that moment I'm meant for more than being at the kitchen sink cooking for everybody else's children, including mine. And so that's a clarifying process.
You got very clear on that.
Yes, you know, if I hadn't have had that experience, I wouldn't have known that was a no for me.
But it's listening to the no too, because how many women would just go yes?
Well, that was one of those moments where I started to realise that my journey is maybe different than other women's journeys. You know, I was still building my coaching and finding my grit in that space, but I knew that I was meant for it. But I also recognised that there would be many women that would have said yes to him because he was a great guy and that would have been their full stop. But my inner desire for, I know I'm meant for more. I know this is not my full stop. I know if I stop here, I'm going to outgrow this guy.
Right.
You know, I knew it. I could feel it. When you've already outgrown one partner, you know, which I did in my husband, you know what that feels like.
Right.
And I didn't need to go down that road again.
No.
to know if I was right.
And it was probably more, and was fresh too. Well, not fresh as in just happened, but
yes,
the feelings were not that old.
That's right. I was still in that process of evolving out of being a stay-at-home mum that was now back in dental hygiene, which was not my forever career. It was just the career I was doing to pay the bills. You know, and so I was in this process. And so for me, you know, love has been a growth journey, and it's true for majority of women if they have lost themselves or never known who they are.
This has been so great. I have one final question for you. What's one thing you wish every woman knew about life after divorce, regardless of age or circumstances?
It's a choice. You know, this could be the end of your world, or it can be the best thing that ever happened to you. And regardless of whether you chose to get a divorce or whether somebody has divorced you, so you didn't want it, you were free of something that was not meant for you anymore.
Right.
And that's a gift, because the worst thing somebody can do is stay married to you when they don't love you anymore. You know, what a waste of a life, what a waste of years. And so either way, whichever attitude you take, you're going to have grief, there's going to be sadness, there's going to be hurt, there's going to be nostalgia. But you either make it into something that is the start of a brand new chapter for you, so let's make it positive, or this, I'm going to fall into a victim mentality, this is the end of my world, I'm going to end up a lonely old aunt. You know, we all had that aunt, you know. You get a choice about the attitude that you get to have, and when you choose your attitude, you choose your behaviour. You know, and that's a choice, to be the victim or to be somebody that chooses and moves differently.
Really quickly, you mentioned that you've written a book.
Yes.
Is that accessible to everybody that's listening?
Yes. So I have 2 books.
Amazing.
So my first book is called Seconds Please. That is a mixture of my own personal journey and professional coaching experience. By the time I wrote that, I'd been coaching in the space for several years, and I'd also come out the other side of my own healing journey. So that's available on Amazon or Booktopia. And then my second book is called Finding Love After Divorce, and that is focused predominantly on the growth journey of love. So if you've healed from your marriage and you are dating and you're wondering what sort of partner and why is it not working for me and what is this saying about me, then this book will help you navigate that journey.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here. This has been so great, and I'm sure many women and couples, men, whoever, will be very, very grateful and really learn something. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. Hey there, it's Nat Kringoudis, host of the Wellness Collective podcast. I know how important it is to have a safe space for women's health, and that's why we created NK the Membership, an online sanctuary where you can access expert guidance and support right from home. Get early access to monthly masterclasses, unlimited access to our entire catalogue, and practical resources to achieve hormone harmony. Plus, enjoy a 20% discount on supplements and join my monthly live Q&A sessions. Join our community of like-minded women and wellness experts to revolutionise your health one topic at a time. Visit our website and sign up now. It's legit Netflix for hormones.